And welcome to another amazing episode of Retrovaniacs. As always, I'm Jeremy Parmentier here with Billy Holiday.
Hello there.
And Jeremy Gregory.
Hey, guys.
And Billy, before we talk about this week's game, or even what we've been playing, did you have any thoughts on Skate or Die 2, since you missed our last show?
It's a pile of shit.
Okay. It's kind of what I assumed you'd say.
That's the summary. I don't think I would have had much more for you if I was on that episode. It was completely unnecessary and a very bizarre direction to go into with what could have just been another skating game with maybe some more events and whatnot. It was completely unnecessary. They did the same thing to that they did to my poor TMC surf design. They went in with a sequel and turned it into an action game. And no, it's awful. It's horrific. I played through it, and I played through it as a kid. I was baffled then. I'm still baffled now.
Well, thankfully, we're not going to cover the TNC Surf Design sequel, at least not this week, because we're going to talk about Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island. But before we get into that, Jeremy, what have you been doing since our last show?
Well, after being sacrificed for not liking Sekiro very much last episode, I know you two are still going at it strong. But I've moved on to a much better game. It's called Anthem. And no, it's the Division 2. And that came out not too long ago. And if you listen to any of our earlier episodes, you kind of heard me and Billy just talk about the Division for what seemed like forever.
Yes.
And so this one is, it is, I was a huge fan of the first one after it kind of got patched up. But this one is all of that and more. I mean, it is a really great looter-shooter. Shooter-looter, whatever you call those things these days. There's just something about that game. People call it like a gameplay loop, where every 30 seconds something's supposed to happen, or get some loot or whatever, and that game does such a great job of that. And also just the entirety of that map of Washington D.C. this time. I basically just become a virtual tourist. I mean, every single level, just about earlier in the game, is in a museum. And it's sad to say that I've spent way too much time just being a virtual tourist in those museums, because they have done such an amazing job of getting just the tiniest details in those museums. So I've not been to Washington, D.C. myself, but after seeing some of this stuff, I kind of want to go, because those museums look kind of cool.
There are nearly as many gunfights in actual Washington, D.C. too. You'll be happy to know.
Oh, good to know. Well, then I've got my primer ready with the Division 2, and I think I'm going to stick with it for now. But it's not Sekiro, so everyone's probably just groaning that I've played this game over Sekiro, and I'm just like, this game's awesome, and Sekiro's just like, eh. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing right now.
Well, all I've been playing is Sekiro, but I don't really want to talk about it because I'm afraid to put out spoilers for people who are not as far as I've gotten. I have made a lot of progress. It is quickly becoming one of my favorites from software games, if not my favorite of all time. I think it's not as interesting to kind of figure out the backstory as the Dark Souls games or even Bloodborne, but it plays super smooth, and I'm really enjoying it. And someday I'll be able to talk a little more about it. But the other thing I've been doing is this past weekend was the last Tetris 99 challenge on the Switch. So I'm attempting to win money because if you're the top 999 players, you win basically $10 on their market. And I've been playing that a lot because I can play it for 5 minutes and then go back to work, which has been absolutely a disaster the last 2 weeks, so I have not had a whole lot of time. Billy, you missed the last episode, and
yes,
you've had the most time. What have you been playing since the last time we talked?
Well, I've been splitting the difference. I've been playing Sekiro hot and heavy, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm not going to talk too much and I'm glad I wasn't on last episode, because our talk of that would have been longer than probably the talk of Skate or Die. But I'm really enjoying it. And it's up there. You talk about From Software games. It's so high up there. I'm still a Bloodborne man for the most part, but this is probably about my second favorite that they've put out there. And I'm progressing. There have been more victories than defeat lately. I don't know if I'm getting better at it or just lucky. but yeah, it's such an enjoyable game, and I've been playing that, and I have also been playing the Division 2. I've actually, it's that thing where I just want to sit down and just play both of these just nonstop. But I don't want to play one, ignore the other. So I'm trying to split my time a little bit. And Division 2, I echo what Jeremy said earlier. We both just love the first one, especially once it got all the updates. It really changed the game around, and there's just always something to do, and that's what I love about this one. And I know I played through Anthem, and I defended it. But yeah, this is when it comes to those loot shooter games, this is definitely top tier. This is how it's done. This is just so incredibly satisfying to sit down and play for an hour or sit down and play for 10 minutes. You always feel like you've gotten something done on there. And yeah, I've been playing through that a lot. I recently, I had such a struggle. I updated my Xbox One to a One X. I found a great opportunity to do that, and so I was already playing it on PS4, and it got packaged with. I was slow getting back into it because I don't know if you have purchased the game on one system, played through it, a few hours in, gotten it on another system for whatever reason, and then had to just replay the stuff you just played. It's painful. I had to get through that wall, and now I have, and I'm really enjoying it. But I did get in time to play the game we are going to be talking about today also, and I guess we're about to get into that.
Well, that's right. It's not a looter shooter. It's an egg shooter.
Yes.
Yoshi's Island, a.k.a. Super Mario World 2 for the Super Nintendo.
And that's when I was a kid. That's the one thing that I got super excited because Super Mario World, without question, to this very day, still one of the better. It's the pinnacle, personally, of the side-scrolling Super Mario games. And to know that there was a sequel on the way. Was announced that there is a Super Mario World 2 coming. I think everyone had visions of just, Super Mario World, but different levels, different enemies, and just different mechanics. And you knew Mario was going to be back. You knew Yoshi was going to be back, and maybe he'd play a bigger part in it. I wasn't quite expecting Yoshi to play such a big part in it, or for it to be such a departure from the original Super Mario World, which was a bit jarring when I first picked it up.
Yeah, and this was this kind of came late in the Super NES's lifespan, I guess. Mm-hmm. And so I remember this coming out around the time that Chrono Trigger did. And the only reason I remember that is because I remember in high school, I hung out with a couple of these Asian kids, and they had a Game Fan magazine or Game Pro or something. I can't remember what it was. But they were looking at the giant preview for Chrono Trigger, and they were going crazy for it. And, I was just like, yeah, that looks all right, And then they turned the page, and it was Yoshi's Island. And I was like, look at this motherfucker right here. Like, this is the real deal. Look at this. I mean, you're playing as Yoshi. It's a new Mario game. It looks like it was drawn by a toddler. I mean, this looks awesome. And I think they actually lost a lot of respect for me that day. Going over that game, just like, wow, this is goddamn. But platformers like that have always been my wheelhouse, especially as a kid. Like that's one of those the kind of genre that I was totally into back then. And hearing that you're going to get a new Mario and you're playing as Yoshi, and for some reason Mario's a baby, and the game just looks crazy. I was super into that. I could not wait until that came out.
I mean, that's what grabs you, though, wasn't it? I mean, initially, you hadn't seen an art style like that before in
No,
a
that was
game.
actually like the first one of the first games I remember
Mhm.
that had its own distinct art style that looked it didn't look like anything else at the time.
Yeah.
And it just had this really neat art style to it.
Yeah, and it's one of those things to where, I mean, the Super Nintendo, well, starting, I guess, I mean, Super Mario World, the original was a looker itself, but I mean, Super Nintendo had a way there of just putting out games, between that, the game we're talking about right now, Donkey Kong Country, games that to this day still are beautiful games, and definitely. One thing that has to be addressed at first, because it is the most glaringly obvious thing, is just the graphics here. And still to this day, I was blown away at just how nice looking, how well this game has held up in the graphics department.
Well, it does look like it's hand drawn, which is, I mean, it's beautiful. That's one of the things. I never really played a lot of this game before this podcast. I tried it. I had it on the Super Nintendo, and I never really played it that much. I mean, it was pretty, but I never got into it. And then it was on the SNES Classic, which was one of the reasons I was excited about the Super Nintendo Classic. So it definitely is still, like you said, it's very beautiful. It is the only game that looks really like this that I can think of. And it kind of started that trend with the Yoshi games where they try to make them all artistically very interesting. This was, as you mentioned, the sequel to Super Mario World and the first game that starred as the main character, at least in a side-scrolling section, Yoshi. He had some other games he was in, like Yoshi's Cookie and some other puzzlers. But after being in Super Mario World, which was his introduction as Mario's kind of sidekick character he could ride around, this game you played as him, and you carried around Baby Mario. The only thing Yoshi can do, much like Mario, he can run and jump, obviously. You can hold down the button to run faster. You can push the square button to stick your tongue out, which lets you eat enemies. If you swallow an enemy, you can spit them back out again, or you can push down, and he basically turns that enemy into an egg. You can have a series of, I think it's 6 or 7 eggs behind you that kind of stay as ammunition, and then one of your buttons, the circle button, will allow you to... it puts like a target up on the screen that kind of rotates back and forth in front of you at a 90 degree, maybe 180 degree arc, and you can shoot eggs across the room. And a lot of the time, it's very obvious it's a projectile weapon. If there's an enemy somewhere, you can hit him with that. But the eggs also do a lot of other really cool triggers in the level. Sometimes they cause switches to go off, or you can break through parts of walls. I mean, the egg shooting piece of this is really the main mechanic, and it's one of the reasons I want to like this game more than I do, because I really like the idea of the egg shooting.
Yeah, it's a unique thing. I think my only, and we might talk about it with some of the encounters later on, is kind of the lack of control over the reticule on the screen. Obviously, it is moving. You're not moving it. So I think that might take a minute to get used to. The best comparison, if you've never played this, is some of the... maybe similar to some of the barrels in Donkey Kong Country that did the moving for you, and you had to pick it right at that angle that you wanted it to go at. It's a mechanic I go back and forth on, but at the same time, we've talked about moving cursors around in games, so maybe this was the best way to go about it.
I thought it was generally fine. Like there were only a few times in the game where it just seemed like it didn't give me enough time to properly aim, and that was kind of later. But for the most part, like starting out, like that was that was just weird to me as a kid, because I totally thought it was going to be like the Super Mario World, where you just press the button and he's going to spit something out, and you can just kind of shoot up, left, right, whatever. But yeah, this totally brings up a cursor that moves around Yoshi, and you have to wait and then hope that you press the button at a certain time. And beyond that, there's also times where you have to bank these eggs off of walls and things like that to hit other things. So you definitely have to get kind of pretty accurate at times with that thing in a game that really doesn't seem like it should be that accurate at times.
Yeah.
When it's not the only weapon you have or the only thing you can do, because other things you can swallow other than eggs. Like you can grab a fire flower, and that means you'll spit fire out of your body instead, which is what you would have done in Super Mario World. It doesn't go to the egg reticle. It doesn't become an egg. It lets you, use that as a projectile for a little bit. Same with if you eat certain enemies, or shells. The shells then you spit out, and it's much like when Mario jumps on a shell or carried a shell and let go of it. So it still has some of the mechanics you'd expect from playing Super Mario World, but then it adds that egg rotating, aiming, throwing mechanic. I think the only thing that would have been, and I don't know if it's better or worse, or not better or worse, I don't know if it was the right design or not, because maybe that would make it too easy. If you push the button to, let's say, bring up the egg aiming, and then if you let go of it, it would stay in that position. You know what I mean? Like if it was, it starts in front of you, rotates up and down kind of slowly, but if you let go, it aims that way. I think one of the later Yoshis may do that, actually. But it's definitely it does take some time to get used to. I don't think it's necessarily incredibly difficult early on. This game has 6 worlds. Each world has 8 regular levels. There are ways to unlock some additional levels, which we'll get into. Each world also has 2 bosses, essentially. Much like most Mario games, there's 3 regular levels or 4 regular levels, and then there's a castle, like a mini castle that's the midpoint. And then at the end, there's another big boss level where you fight those bosses. So it's very much in that Mario design as far as how the levels are organized. And it's got all the same trappings that you'd expect in a Super Mario game. It's got platforms that fall when you jump on them, sometimes slowly, sometimes fast. It's got some levels that auto side scroll. It is strictly 2-dimensional. Like there is no going in and out of the screen. It's just regular like Super Mario World. It's very similar, but again, different art style, and playing as Yoshi completely different than playing as Mario as far as to really get through these levels. Now, unlike Mario, who doesn't have a health bar, you don't really have a health bar in this either. However, unlike Mario, where you get power-ups and then as you get hit, you slowly lose your power-ups, Yoshi does have kind of a count of total what you think at first are hit points if you don't get hit. And they build up to, I believe, 30 hit points, but they aren't really hit points because this is where, for me, this is the mechanic in the game that I really don't like. And I understand why it's there, and it makes it much more challenging, but it's also the most annoying game mechanic pretty much in any game. When you get hit, as Yoshi, Baby Mario becomes, in a bubble and kind of floats off and makes this terrible Mario crying noise. And if you've played it before, you can hear it. And if you played it recently, you can hear it when you sleep. And it goes on nonstop. And while that's going on, the counter for your hit points is slowly going down from whatever it was, maximum of 30, down to 0. It's not super fast. It's not like it goes 30, 29, 28, 27, but it's fast enough that it does not take long, especially if you don't have, the maximum hit points. If it ever gets to 0, those, like the wizard characters from the Mario games, the wizard Koopa guys, I don't know their names, will sweep in, steal Baby Mario, and that's it. You've lost a life. And that's one of the ways you can die. And it's the worst way you can die because it meant you've probably listened to 30 seconds of Baby Mario screaming. And he floats around in such a way that you can't get to him from everywhere. Sometimes you have to jump at specific points. Sometimes you have to climb a bunch of things. It's very difficult sometimes to get Baby Mario back. And it is absolutely annoying the entire time.
I will say this. This is the big complaint about this game for me, and it's not just the sound. The sound is just it's grating. They have found a way to take what is already a sound that, when you think of a baby crying, I don't know, maybe you may have more nurturing instincts than the gentleman of this podcast, but a sound that we probably already consider grating. Think of a stranger's baby crying. You don't mind hearing your own, but a stranger's, it's nails on a chalkboard, and they found some way to make it even worse. And you're going to hear it a lot. And that's bad enough. But my main complaint is, like you're saying, it's not as simple as just jumping up and he's back. Sometimes you've got to work. And it brings progressing through the stage to a halt. And it's now a mission to, enemies may still be on there. There may still be obstacles there. But now you're having to track down this Baby Mario also, whereas Mario World, the previous game, Mario takes a hit, he loses his power up, he shrinks down, whatever, he keeps going. This just it throws a wrench in there. It brings things to a halt, and maybe just for a few seconds, and maybe for the full extent of the time, but it happens enough time to where it takes me out of it to stop progressing through the level, and now to kind of have to go on a little bit of a brief before I can get started again.
Yeah, I agree that when he gets knocked off, that is when the game just goes straight downhill for me. Like, I love Yoshi's Island. It is one of my favorite games of all time, but whoever decided that was a good fun idea to put into their video game, I just can't believe people sat around and was like, this is the way we want to do this. We want this baby shrieking. We want this to sound like Friday Night at Cracker Barrel. You have to have this thing just wailing. And it gives you like this weird level of anxiety. Like, not only are you trying to get baby Mario, and sometimes, like you said, it's not easy, but you've just got this sound that is just killing your brain. Like, I hate the sound of babies crying. It's one reason I don't have kids. It's just one of those sounds that it bothers me on a level that I can't explain. And so whenever that thing starts winding up, it's just like, oh my God, I can't play this game in the long periods that I want to, because unless I'm having a really good run, baby Mario's going to get knocked off a few times on level. And usually that's enough for me to just kind of stop my progress and come back to it later, because it is just the worst. It has to be the worst sound effect in a video game. If not, then top 5. It's just so bad.
Well, and to make matters worse, in order to get the extra levels, you have to get 100% in each level. And 100% is earned by collecting 3 things. One is there are 5 flowers in each level. Sometimes they're hidden, sometimes they're obviously just sitting there, but you got to find them. They're not impossible to find generally. You have to get 20 red coins, and red coins a lot of the time are just regular coins, and sometimes they're harder to get, and when you get them, they become a red coin, but other ones are hidden in spots, or monsters carry them around, or they're in some kind of minor puzzle to unlock the red coins. But not only do you have to get the 20 red coins and the 5 flowers, but you need 30 full hit points. You need max hit points when you leave the level. So you could have the perfect run through a level and get right towards the end, and then get hit by something you really shouldn't be getting hit by because you're right at the end of the level, you're not paying attention, and great. There goes your perfect run. There's no way to get those points back easily. There are things in the levels that will give you some, like stars you can pick up to give you more hit points, or there are those red flowers you can shoot an egg into that will give you a bunch of stars all at once, but a lot of the time, they aren't everywhere easily to get, and if you've already gotten them, they aren't there again. So if you've gotten everything through the level, you have your 30 hit points, you're right to the end of the level, and you make a mistake, not only do you have to hear that sound, but you also guaranteed you've got to play that level again in full, because you're not getting 100%.
So I got to ask, are you guys I have to collect everything Mario player, or are you just, I got to get to the end of the stage and progress Mario player?
Oh man, it depends. If there's like secret, like Mario World, you had the secret stages, you had the hidden stages. Yeah, I loved unlocking those, but I am not every coin must be picked up kind of guy. I've it's not until the later Mario titles, I guess, I think when 64 rolled around, when there were stars involved with collecting all of the, a certain colored coin or something like that, or doing this or doing that. Yeah, I did a lot more collecting then. As far as the side scrolling Marios, it was hold down the fucking run button and get from one side to the other generally.
I am generally a get 100% if I can on the level, and if I can't, I either have to just be okay with that and march forward and really feel like I never finished a game, even if I got to the quote end, if I left, especially if there's like this game, unfortunately, because it's extra levels, I feel like I can't not do them. It's one thing if it's like, oh yeah, if you get all the extra, 100% of every level, you get, like one extra boss fight at the end. I mean, I'd still want to do that, but I'd live without that. But knowing that there are, extra levels in each world that I'm not seeing because I'm not getting 100%, unless I master each level, that irritated me. And that's why I've not finished this game. I have not gotten the whole way through. I couldn't convince myself to not worry about that 100%. And so I've never gotten to the end of this game. I've seen the end of this game, and I'd love to get there. And I've beaten some of the other Yoshi games. And for some reason, those don't have that effect on me, but this one 100% does. I feel like I have to get 100% or I play the level over again.
I kind of fall into that as well. And it's weird. It's kind of like Billy said, like I didn't actually fall into that category at all, I think, before Yoshi's Island, because I think this is like one of the first Mario. I think this is the first Mario game that really emphasized collecting all of those collectibles.
Yeah.
So like when that was introduced to me, I was like, well, shit, that's what the game wants me to do. I have to find all of this stuff. And I still, to this day, even for this podcast, even though I was forcing myself to progress and just get through it, I still fell right back into that trap of like, well, there's that over there. There's a piece of candy. There's a piece of candy. I just kept following these little collectibles around, and before you know it, I'm trying to 100% a level again.
Well, if you can get past that and you can force yourself to not try to master every level, the other positive playing through this game, other than that it is a beautiful game, is the bosses, much like most Mario games, are actually really cool. They all kind of, unfortunately, since the mechanic in this game is shoot eggs, they all kind of have the same weakness. You shoot eggs at them. But still, they are big a lot of the time. A lot of them grow as you're fighting them. Like there's the ghost in World 2 that it grows every time you hit it. It shrinks every time you hit it, but other ghosts show up. I mean, it uses that mode 7 scaling in almost every level and every boss, but somehow it doesn't bother me like it does in most other games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the boss fights on here, they're a real joy on here, I will say. And yeah, it takes full advantage of the mode 7 on here and the art style. And yeah, I love a damn boss that takes up half the screen. And this game has it. And it has some unique boss fights, too. There's one boss that actually swallows you down at the beginning of the fight, and you're fighting inside of him. And yeah, this thing does a lot of innovative things with the bosses. And yeah, if it was as simple as, hey, here's this boss, throw some eggs, that would have got tiresome really quick. Especially, I'm not completely sold on the aiming mechanic. So yeah, I definitely the highlight of the game for me. Boss fights and Mario games aren't necessarily, especially the side-scrolling ones, aren't really renowned for their boss fights. You think about the previous Mario games, it was just, either jump over this guy and get to the end of the bridge, or, throw something at this guy, or just jump on him a couple times. So yeah, to see it changed up a little bit, this game definitely, one thing I can't take away from it is each boss encounter felt special for the most part.
And especially as a kid, like those boss fights were just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Like I think too many of them kind of fall into the same trope of this guy's going to grow really big, and that's what you do. But thankfully, like you guys said, like they do a great job of just making almost all of those bosses feel unique. Like the one that the ghost in the plant, where you have to like push him off the side while there's two shy guys pushing him toward you. That one, I still love that one. But then again, like you mentioned with the aiming the eggs and trying to hit some of these, the piranha plant later in the game that has the smallest area that you can actually aim to get your egg to where you need to hit his weak spot. Oh my God, fuck that thing. That's where the aiming finally got annoying to me, and did so again this time as well.
Yeah, I never really got quite good at it. I mean, the egg mechanic is fine, but for me, I just couldn't put up with not just the sound, but like you had mentioned earlier, Jeremy, the anxiety you get from when you lose that baby Mario. And I know that they didn't continue that mechanic on any further Yoshi game. I'm sure we're not the only people who complained about that as a mechanic. Not only being, short time, it's really penalizing, especially if you're trying for the 100%, and it's the most obnoxious sound ever. So I don't know quite why that bothers me to the point that it does, that I can't play this game, because I generally like Yoshi games. My son and I played through Yoshi's Woolly World on the Wii U, and we're going to get the new Yoshi's Crafted World, and I like they all have the same kind of gameplay, but what they don't have, crying baby Mario.
And I think they knew that. They had to know that. It was just the one complaint. I remember like all the reviews back then when it came out, they were just like, this is an amazing game, but Baby Mario. Like that was just it. And it's still to this day, if anyone mentions Yoshi's Island, that's the first thing they probably think of is that sound effect.
Yeah, and I have remembered being annoyed by it when I first played through it. But it's one of those things where you're like, well, maybe it's a little overhyped. Maybe, people, they find on a game that doesn't have a ton of flaws, and they kind of run with it. It gets a life of its own and gets blown up out of proportion. No, it's literally a very distracting, very jarring thing, and it's amazing to me that this, and with it being a Mario title, it had to get play tested out the ass. It's an amazing thing to me that this made it through in the form that it's in, as harsh as it is.
I don't think this is necessarily a hard game if you don't care about getting 100%. I mean, I could get through the levels without many problems. You do have a number of lives, but it's kind of unlimited because if you just run out, you just continue. At the end of every level, there's like a ring you jump through, and it has the 5 flowers if you collected them all. And as many flowers that are there, it does kind of a roulette thing. And if it lands on a flower, you get to a bonus game. There's a slot machine bonus game. There's a, pick so many cards that have certain characters on them bonus game. There's a handful of them. But they all award extra lives. And at least, like the slot one, for example, you can get 7, I think, if you get 3 Yoshis or three stars or something. I mean, it gives you a lot of options to get extra lives in this game. Plus, it's a Mario game, so with every 100 coins is an extra life. And there are parts in each level where you can find huge chunks of coins. So it makes it very easy to keep alive. But I think almost all Mario games do, to the point where new ones, especially the 3D ones, you just have unlimited lives. So it's not a hard game at all. Again, if you're not the person that needs to collect every single thing the whole way through, which is also, I think, something most of the Yoshi games do after this. I know Woolly World was super easy, but then again, to find all the hidden things, definitely more difficult.
Yeah.
So, and the one on the Nintendo 64, totally just can't remember the name for that one for some reason. That one was nonstop collectibles as well. So, and that one was so short that really the only length you could get out of it was actually collecting things. But this one, I think there's a lot of game here. Like it's not a short game at all. And I think there's a ton of variety to it. We didn't even mention like the spots where Yoshi can turn into different vehicles.
Oh yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, like that first time that happened, I was like, holy shit, that's awesome. So there's a lot of variety here. But yeah, it all comes back to, well, it's a great game, but can you handle Baby Mario? And that's a big step for a lot of people. Because there's a lot of people I know that literally can't play this game because of him.
Well, and even if you turn the volume all the way down, which I don't recommend because I think the rest of the music in it is good Mario style music. It's not bad at all. But still, it's that you see the countdown. A lot of the time, like it looks like, yeah, no, that's been my complaint too. I can totally see the standpoint of people who cannot play this game because of that. Even if you turn the volume all the way down, it would hurt the rest of the game. I think the music's very good. I think the game sounds nice. The sounds in some parts are, kind of part of the game. So you don't want to lose that. But yeah, as soon as as that happens, not only do you get that awful sound, and it makes like a dinging sound as well, and you've got, the countdown in the corner. It's almost too much. Even if you had no volume, I think you'd still get that anxiety.
And even without the sound, it's still the mechanic itself of trying to get him back. It doesn't fit with the game very well. Like Billy said, it just grinds the progression to a halt as you're just like, all right, hold on, let me run back over here and try to get Baby Mario's ass. So, it's just one of those things that it's not enjoyable on any level, really. But take that away, and I think it's a great game.
Yeah, that's a big but, because I do think overall, and I think that's why the other Yoshi games I like a lot more than this, is that it's a great layout. I like the idea that it looks like, like hand-drawn cartoons. I like that it's a little bit easier than some of the harder Mario games at first. Again, unless you're trying to get 100%. And I like the collectability, even though it's annoying that I'm unable to get past it. I like to find those things. I like to scavenge hunt in a level. So there's a lot of really, really good things in this game that I think Nintendo learned from and built better versions of this game, even up to, Crafted World that hit, less than a month ago. I mean, it still has the same core mechanics that this game has. They've just streamlined it and removed the most glaring misstep, Crying Mario. So, Super Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island. Definitely worth checking out. Definitely a lot of really cool mechanics introduced with, unfortunately a very loud and glaring flaw. But still, maybe that doesn't bother you. Maybe you love the sound of crying Mario. If so, this could be your favorite game of all time. It's just not ours. But I bet we have at least one listener question.
We actually do. And both of these are brought to you by the best content forum on the internet. I stand by that. Mm-hmm. At retrovania.net. Please go on there, scroll to the bottom. There's a contact form. Fill that out. Ask us anything. Tell us what you enjoy playing. We don't really care as long as it is not just, horrible. And this week we're starting off with Patrick. And he writes in to say, hey, I just wanted to thank you guys for doing this podcast and continuing to push out new episodes. I listen to you guys on my way to work and back home all the time. I've tried other retro podcasts, but they just don't seem to compare. Oh, thank you, Patrick. I enjoy the episode's content, obviously, but I do really enjoy the little segment you guys do every episode where you talk about what you've been playing. You guys mentioned Hollow Knight a couple of episodes, so I decided to try it. And even though the game frustrated the hell out of me, I managed to beat it and really enjoyed it. Now I'm on to Ori and the Blind Forest, and so far, so good. So thank you guys for that. I went back to listen to some of the older episodes again, and I noticed they date back to 2015, which equals a lot of episodes to go through if you're new to the show. Anyway, my question is, which one of those episodes do you guys consider your most memorable? Again, thanks for the content. And P.S., one of my favorite moments was when Jeremy P. went by JP for literally one episode.
Okay, that was our first episode, and I thought it would be easier than having two Jeremys. But it turns out since no one's ever called me JP, it was impossible to remember. I should probably go back and re-edit that first episode to take that out.
Oh, man. Yes, for the remaster, the George Lucas, remastering of the early episodes.
We cover better games, too. I think the first few episodes are a little rough, but after that, I think they're all generally good. I don't know what my most notable episode would be. I mean, there's definitely games that I remember either liking or not liking to extremes. But I think episodes like our Castlevania 16-bit episode, where we covered 3 games and all of which were great, might be my favorite. But maybe it's not the best to hear. I don't know. It was definitely the best to play. So I'm going to go with that. That's my favorite, and least favorite would probably be one of the TurboGrafx games where you guys just made fun of me the whole time. I'm going to go with that.
Oh, man. Well, as an aside, I have also started playing Ori and the Blind Forest, which Jeremy Gregory is a huge proponent of. And I hope you're enjoying that one as much as I am. It's a wonderful, wonderful game so far. Yeah, it's tough looking back because we've covered a lot of ground. I don't until it's mentioned to me. I'm sorry. I think one of my favorite episodes. I have a couple, and one of them was, of course, when we finally sat down and discussed the Sega CD masterpiece that was Mansion of Hidden Souls, because I was very pleased that we got that game out there. But my favorite episode was pretty much, it's so early. It's like the 4th or 5th one, where we just shit on General Chaos for like 45 minutes. And Jeremy came in full of enthusiasm, and by the end, I think he was just a husk.
I was going to say that's actually probably one of my favorite episodes as well. Just getting torn down for a good 45 minutes.
Well, I mean, but to your credit, and I think my favorite type of episodes we have is when, and it's the same with Mansion of Hidden Souls, when one of us is very passionate about a game, and we're just on the defense the entirety of the episode.
Yeah, I think those are really kind of the most fun for me because, if there's a game on here that we're covering and we're just all kind of like to or whatever, I think it kind of comes across. But if there's one that, one of us is super passionate about or something like that, that also comes across. And yeah, I do really enjoy those episodes. So for me, I'd say General Chaos. And also that string of episodes there where I got dangerously into The Witcher. And that was just kind of all that we were talking about for a while.
Yes. And
yeah, those are always fun for me. I also really enjoyed the Mutant League Football episode.
Oh,
that was great to come back to and play. Totally love that game and that episode. All right. Our second and actually final question this week comes in from Fritz, the Love Elf. And his message is, sorry, its fucking name. Yo, guys, I feel old as shit listening to you all the time, so thanks for that, I guess. And feeling old got me to thinking how much my tastes have changed since I was a kid. Like how much I used to be able to sit down and play a full season of baseball with whatever baseball game was hot at the time. Mm-hmm. These days, I can't be bothered to even play a sports game since my interest in all that is all but gone. Do any of you have the same problem with games or types of games that you loved as a kid that makes you grown now to think of playing them? If you answer this, then thanks a ton. And if you don't, then eat shit for making me fill out this stupid box.
Well, I think it's a wonderful box. I think he's understating the joy of using that form. I don't know
no
if
need to bully the box.
I don't know if I necessarily have any specific type that I did love and now I don't love, but I definitely go through waves, and they're long waves. I went through about a 5-year window where I refused to play a JRPG. I blame Final Fantasy VIII, but it was really a lot of games all at once where I just got bored and thought they were all exactly the same and kind of mediocre. The great ones were already gone, and it took me until like the late PS2 to get back into them and try them again. And games I used to play as a kid, because there were so many of them, even though I kind of hated them, were shooters, regular, 2D Gradius style shooters. There were so many I didn't like them, and then especially after getting the TurboGrafx, where that's 90% of the library, I didn't get into them a lot. But now that they're so rare, as a major studio release, there's plenty of indie ones, but a major studio release that when they do come out and they're special, like Ikaruga or Bangayo, any of those like really cool, interesting shooters, I'm way into them. And so now even just like on the NES library that came out for the Switch, they have shooters on there occasionally, and I'll just play through Stinger or whatever's on there because I like those games, and they don't make too many of them anymore.
Yeah, and with me, mine is the exact same. It's sports games. I used to, just pick it. Even I think back to the Super Nintendo and playing through. King Griffey Jr. had a couple of baseball games on there, and they were so distinctly different that I would play. I would have an entire season running on both games, and I would just pick one up and play through. Of course, it goes without saying, Tecmo Bowl, those early NBA titles, even the early NHL 94 in particular. Sports games then, I don't know if it's as much I changed. I mean, I didn't even watch sports back then, so it's not like I dropped off from watching sports, so I stopped playing the games. I have as much use for sports now as I did as a child. But it's just that the games I feel changed so much, and lost my interest. It used to be you just picked it up and a football game, you had a couple running, couple passing. That was it. I had a couple buttons to work with. King Griffey Jr. Baseball, you could change your lineup. You could trade players. But all the stats were there, and they were easy to understand. The controls were simple enough. I think sports games are one of those that now they're leaning more towards simulation. And I think it's alienating a lot of the real sports crowd. I think it got to the point to where if you are not a sports fan, you're not going to enjoy every, little aspect that the newest Madden has to offer or, newest MLB game or something like that. So sports games are definitely something as a kid were always heavy in my rotation. And I'm talking every sport, from golf to soccer to just everything. I loved all of them, but I haven't played a recent sports title in years now.
I definitely agree that sports was a thing for me. Also, with JRPGs, like Jeremy said, those were my thing back in the day. I loved playing any JRPG, and but these days, unless it's Persona, I probably won't touch it. I did play through Final Fantasy 15, but I don't really count that as a JRPG. That's not something that you're spending hours of grinding or doing the JRPG thing.
Yeah.
And it's just very hard for me to get back in that mindset where that's fun. And I back in the day though, I could sit and play those things all day long, just grinding and grinding out levels, finding equipment. that was the height of fun for me back in the day. Besides that, I'd probably say sim games like SimCity. I used to love those games as a kid, and in anything that Maxis put out, I was a huge fan of. And sitting down to them now, I'll click around and be like, yeah, this is kind of cool, but it doesn't hold my attention like what it used to. For some reason, just doesn't click the same way anymore with me. And that kind of makes me sad because I remember playing those games and absolutely loving them to death back in the day. Even The Sims, that was a great game for me back in the day. And just trying to sit down to that stuff now, I just don't really have the patience for it. So I guess those would probably be the two biggest for me.
I guess I also kind of did the same with fighting games. I went through a phase where I was super into fighting games, and now I just can't get into them. Not technical fighting games. I mean, things that are, Bomberman or, Power Stone, games where it's more action than trying to get combos out. I can play those, but a straight up like Street Fighter style game, I just can't do it anymore. I'm not good at them. I don't have the patience to learn them. But I think that's always been kind of the case. I think there was just a window where I was super into them, and then that went away. So I don't know what our game for the next episode is going to be. We had some ideas. We threw them out. We will surprise everybody. Put some hints up on our Twitter account, on our Instagram. Anything we can find that is retrovania.net. You can find all of them at retrovania.net, along with our question form. And, see if you can figure out which game it's going to be. See if we even know before we start recording again what we'll be talking about next time, when we will cover who knows what. So stay tuned. See you next time.